So if you're joining us, welcome to the Museum of Glass. We can see down here that the cylinders down here on this car are being carted off to the back of the museum. If we look at our pedestal down here on the right-hand side, this is what we are going to be producing here today. You can tell Kristen here, she's a professional cold worker. She's one of the best here. And she's going to get rid of that punny mark. Now, it's crazy to believe, but all these pieces we have here had that little residue on the very top. Kristen's going to take those away and begin to cut the residue. And later on, you won't even tell that was there at one point. But again, down here in the center of the hot shop, we're continuing. We have the mock crew. And I do want to let you know that here today, we do have a visiting artist. Now, we have Tina down here. She is watching as all her pieces are being created here today. Now, the start of the process is actually happening down on the left-hand side of the hot shop floor. So as we watch this cylinder being completed, if you're wondering, well, how does that start? Where does he begin from and how does it look? Well, that process is down here. Sarah has gathered one layer of glass and she's already applied the color. We saw the color being applied on top, and then Sarah actually pushed that color layer nice and evenly around the bubble. As of right now, Sarah is going to continue to shape that. And what we will do is we're going to take a couple gathers. The way we make something larger or bigger is we just take multiple dips inside of our furnace. In a little bit after this break off, I will introduce the glass furnace and some of the key equipment we have here. But the piece down in the center is just about done. If we leave it out here, it will actually get too cold too fast. It can break, crack, and even explode. If we want to prevent it from breaking, we will slowly have to bring it back to room temperature. Down on your right-hand side, we have an annealing oven. It is currently sitting at 920 degrees, and it will stay in there for the next 24 hours to cool down. Sayuri down here in this green jacket, she has some Kevlar gloves. We're gonna go ahead and break that piece free now using a little bit of water on the very end of that transition rod. A little tap, and look at that. Another one completed. All right, well, if you're joining us now, welcome to the Museum of Glass. I do want to start off by introducing myself. My name is David. I'm going to be your MC here today, and if you have any questions about what you're seeing here today, you can raise your hand or shout my name, and I'll come right over to answer any question that you might have. Now, we see down here on the left-hand side, the one that we're going to create next, it's a little bit larger than the last piece we put away, which means Sarah's going to have to take some additional. We'll have to take an additional layer. to achieve that size that we want. Now down here, we have a furnace. Now this is where the hot molten glass is being pulled out of. When I open this door, it just looks red and orange. I know, but there's so much more going on inside. Pretty much behind this door lies a ceramic pot. You can think of the furnace as a hot bowl of soup that is always turned on. It's never turned off. That furnace does not take any breaks, any vacations, any holidays, or weekends off. It runs 24/7, 365 days a year. Down here on the left-hand side, we saw Sarah shaping the bubble, and she is now letting it cool down. Remember that the color of the glass that we're working with is this beautiful blue glass we see on the right-hand side of the pedestal. Now, when we're working with it, it's not gonna look like that, unfortunately. The heat will always distort the true color, but its color will come back when the glass has cooled down properly. Sarah's letting that bubble cool down, and she's doing a couple different things right now. By letting the core cool down, we are giving ourselves the ability to gather more glass, but also maintain more control. Now we do use a handful of different shaping tools, and as we begin to use them, I'll explain some of them as we go here, but I do want to take a second and introduce the reheating chamber, which is the glory hole, as Sarah steps in front of the furnace, ready for that second layer of molten mass on the very end of the rod. If you're wondering how it sticks, due to the consistency of the glass, it allows it to stick to the previous coat of glass or even the solid rod. The rods that we use here are blowpipes. You can think of them as a large metal straw. And they're made out of stainless steel. A stainless steel being a very poor conductor of heat. Now notice where Sarah has her left hand. Notice where she's actually turning the rod. It's right where the shiny part of the stainless steel is still there. You can notice towards the tip, the pipe goes from its shiny stainless steel to a dull gray, ultimately a black towards the tip. Now we're not placing our hand in that darkened area. We're placing it right behind that on the shiny part. And of course, this is the Museum of Glass. Is this the highest level of professional glass blowing? So we don't want any impurities in the glass. We can see right now Sarah's pulling, removing some debris on the glass, or maybe even an air bubble that we don't want in the final finished piece. So we take that moment, we pull that bad glass right off, and we snip it free. As we continue to watch the live glass making, I always recommend this top balcony. It's one of the best views of the action that we have down here. It's a bird's eye view. I highly recommend it at one point or another. You check out the glass making from that top balcony. Well, this is the actual glass, blowing part of glass making. We can see Sayuri down here. She's blowing air through that blowpipe, and that is expanding the bubble. One of the shaping tools we have here is a wet pad of newspaper. We can see Sarah holding it every so often down here, and there is nothing special about the newspaper we burn here at the Museum of Glass. But the Wall Street Journal is the preferred one, but again, any old newspaper will do. We fold it, drench it in water, and burn right through that newspaper. Now remember, Sayuri has entered that glory hole. It's about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And the longer time she spends in that oven, the hotter the glass gets, which means the faster you need to turn the rod to keep it on center. All that mass off the end of the rod. Again, if you can't tell, our professional is considered to be one of the best crews. We saw Sarah pull out one of those small little bubbles on a moving bubble here. Although the action does start down on this left-hand side, it will be moving to the center of the hot shop in a while. But as of right now, we'll continue to work on this side. This is where really we start it up, start that bubble. Now glass has a really good memory. So if we have a distorted bubble, when we bring it over to the center, we'll be able to see that the bubble is not blowing out so evenly. We can use a couple different tools to fix that, like a wooden block down here. Now these wooden blocks that we use here in the hot shop floor are made out of fruit wood, and we love burning fruit wood like cherry wood because when we do, it does smell like a barbecue in here. But in reality, we use that fruit wood because it just contains more moisture and they last longer. They live in water their whole entire life, so they're essentially waterlogged all the way down to the center. When we begin to see smoke coming from the wooden block, it is then sending smoke signals that we're actually burning the wood, the top layer of the wood. And so that's a good time to dip it back into the water. Now, Sayuri down here is about to spray some water into our furnace. The reason why we're spraying water is that it will minimize the bubbles that we can gather. The water will bring the bubbles to the surface and actually pop them, minimizing the amount of air bubbles that we can actually gather. Now, just like last time, Sarah's gonna let this core cool down. Just like last time, she's giving herself the ability to maintain more control, but also gather more glass. The colder that core is, the more the glass wants to stick to the top layer. And this is what we do if we want to make something larger. We'll just take another dip in the furnace. And look at that, Sarah has stepped back in front of the furnace. Remember, behind that door lies a ceramic pot that holds approximately 1,000 pounds of molten glass. So what's going on is we're dipping the rod inside of that pool of hot molten glass. And look at that, just like that, we've added more material, giving ourselves a little bit more playroom so our piece can ultimately become larger. And notice, just like last time, the wooden block is brought back. It's gonna push the molten glass all around the bubble and also the heat. So when we begin to blow air, that bubble is gonna blow out nice and evenly. At this point, if Sarah sees that the bubble is blowing a little bit to one side, well, she might add a little bit more mass to that side or cool down that mass area. So when we begin to blow air, it's not gonna blow out in that area. Once again, if you're joining us and wondering what we are making here today, well, down on your right hand side of the pedestal we have these wonderful cylinders, and here in a little bit I'll explain what's going to be going on with them and what we will do after these pieces are complete. So the glass that we melt here at the museum is very special, soda lime glass. Now, the glass that we melt here is specifically formulated for offhand glass making, which means it's just formulated to stay at a molten state for a longer period of time. So we just have a longer working time with this glass. Again, it is soda lime glass. It is produced north of Seattle, about 45 minutes, called Spectrum Glass Nugget. And that's the glass that we are melting here today. Now, again, the action will now be moving to the center of the hot shop floor. And look at that, just as last time, we used that wooden block to ensure that our bubble will blow out evenly. Now, do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions that you might have about the process you are seeing? I had mentioned that our rods are made out of stainless steel. We can see Sarah now using a pipe cooler. It's just cold water that we run on the surface of the rod, and in turn that will cool it down, give us more flexibility when we're holding the rod, since we're able to slide our hand closer to the molten mass. Remember that the weight of this piece can vary. When you have all the mass on the very end of the rod, it can feel like 2 bowling balls on the end of the fishing rod, even though it might just be 15 pounds of solid glass. It may feel much heavier than that. Oh yes, so when you're working with a hot glass, you want a team minimum of 3. That 3 is a really good number. Now, it is possible to blow glass by yourself, but you're very limited to the size, scale, and complexity of the piece. So if you're gonna create something like this by yourself, I don't recommend it, first of all. It's gonna go wrong, unless you're really highly trained. But again, a team of 3 is a minimum for something like this. Right now, we're actually starting off in the constriction, which will be the break-off point. So if you're wondering, how will this mass of glass be broken free from the rod? Well, right now, we see Ben down here using a tool called the jacks, and he's squeezing down both blades to create a small little waste point. Now, although there's still a lot of shaping to be done, we have already created the break-off zone very early in the glass making process. And look at all this teamwork that is going on now. We have Sayuri down here with the wooden paddles to shield Ben from the heat that's radiating off. We have Gabe who's blowing through the rod, and we have Sarah down here that's keeping downward pressure because right now that rod's gonna wanna lift up since all the mass is down. So Sarah's actually keeping that rod turning and down contact with the rails. This is what glass making is all about. It is all about teamwork, and we can clearly see why we need a minimum of 3, and here today 4 people to create something like this. The way that we create a cylinder is first we determine the diameter. Once we have the required diameter, then we'll begin to get the length. So notice now that for a little bit, Ben was actually heating up this cylinder, just half of the bubble. That way, when we begin to stretch it, half of it will blow or fall down. Again, we'll probably use gravity to bring that down, but we've pretty much already set the given diameter to this piece. Instead of using our handheld newspaper pad, Ben has opted to use the larger newspaper, which does the same thing as that pad, just a little bit extra, so it can touch more of the glass and ultimately shape more of it. Down on the left-hand side of the hot shop, we have Gabe with the black hat. Now he is starting what we call the punty, the transfer rod that we will use and will become the new handle for our piece. Now, we're gonna get rid of the rod that we have now so we can begin to work on the opposite end, and we can begin to work on that really dense color layer part. It's very important that the punty goes on center and it gets added to the very top of our piece down here. Right now, the team is letting everything stabilize before it's broken free. This will just give Gabe, again, a little extra strength when it breaks off. He won't have to turn as fast, maintain more control. Now look at that. All we needed is 2 drops of water on that piece to break it free. Again, the water is extremely bad to hot glass because it causes it to crack, but we use that to our advantage. Now this piece is being centered right now, making sure when it's turned, that it's turning on center, that it's not bumpy. Now real quickly, if we look at our pedestal, notice that these ones are nice and clean. We have already gotten rid of the little residue that goes on top. So what happens is, we have a state-of-the-art hot shop here in front of you, but directly behind it, we have a state-of-the-art cold shop also. The cold shop is a studio where we can work on glass while it's cold to get rid of any marks or debris that might be on the glass layer. So what's gonna be going on here is we also have one of the best cold workers in the glass community, and her job is gonna be to remove that mark and then polish it up. You won't even notice that there was anything on that top part of the vessel. But on our top screen now, we are gonna play an image of what the final piece will look like. It's a little drawing, a mock-up of our artist that draws and paints all these pieces that we see here. I believe it is in watercolor. And we can talk to you a little bit about what and how these are going to be joined together. Again, they're going to be highly interactive. We see that image on the top screen. When you walk by them, they might light up or they might make a sound. Again, this is an ongoing project that our visiting artist, Tina, has been working on. Now, this is one of another project we can also see here on the left-hand side of the hot shop. We have these horns. These will also be interactive, by the way, on the very tops and the other part. These will also be highly interactive. Again, when you walk by them, they might make a sound or light up. These pieces still need to be cold work. We can see this piece on the top. We're gonna get rid of that, so it's an open horn on this end also. And that's gonna be happening later on also in the cold shop. Again, this little piece that we see here, we're gonna get completely rid of that. We will have an open horn on this end. Since we created the constriction towards the top, we also have thickened the glass on that very top part. If we want to have an even thickness all the way around, we will pull that thick glass right off, and the next step we will take is to actually trim or cut off that thick section of glass. So down on the left-hand side, if you're wondering how the color is applied to the clear glass, again, down on the left-hand side, Sarah has taken some white glass on the very tip. She's gonna spread that color nice and evenly around the bubble. So in turn, when we begin to blow air, the whole piece will be that color of white. Using the propane torch, that's about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, we are adding some heat towards the very back of the glass. Now that very back part is the piece that absorbs the least energy. So by using the torch, we are counteracting the glory hole. Now remember, this is a chamber approximately 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, it's the fire that we're entering to soften the molten glass. Now we're gonna have a different project starting off down here. We also have our furnace. Now this is where the hot molten glass is actually being pulled out of. Remember that the furnace holds approximately 1,000 pounds of molten glass and is about the same temperature as molten lava, which is 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's hard to believe, but the start that we see Sarah working on right now, that is how our piece working on the center started off. That's exactly how it looked. Again, different color, but the setup is almost very similar. The piece down in the center is just about done, which means we are now getting ready to break it free. Sayuri has suited up in a heat protective layer with some Kevlar gloves, a little water, a little tap, and look at that, on its way to the annealing oven. Can we give our whole crew and also our visiting artist, Tina, a round of applause here today? Now, the reason we set the glass into the annealer is if we leave it out here, it gets too cold, too fast. It can break, crack, and even explode. Now, if we want to prevent it from breaking, we'll have to slowly bring it back to room temperature in this oven. So right now it's sitting at 920 degrees. It's gonna stay at that temperature till 5 o'clock. Then we'll go ahead and turn it off and it'll slowly make its descent back to room temperature. So the next project that we will begin on is, if you look on your left-hand side of the pedestal, we're gonna switch directions a little bit. We see these horns at the Museum of Glass Hot Shop crew have made on Thursday. We're gonna go ahead and make one of these horns. This time around, we're gonna make it out of white glass. So we're gonna make that same process, just using white color. Now notice when we're working with the glass, always looks like a hue of red and orange, but remember, the heat will always distort the true color, but its true color will be white when it's complete. And this is the project that we will be working on. Remember that this end that we see down here will be cut free later on. So we're actually gonna remove that so we have an open horn on this end also. This is gonna be an interactive piece. On our top screen, we're gonna get a diagram of this piece, again, so we can understand some of the interactions that might occur when it's complete. Remember, when you walk close to it, it might light up or make a sound. Again, there's still a lot more work to be done, even though this piece will be done within the hour. When Tina takes this back to her studio, she still has a lot more work ahead of her. Do we have any questions from our audience? Any questions that you might have about the glass blowing process that you are seeing here today? Again, I personally recommend the top balcony. It's one of the best places to view the live glass blowing, and also check out some of the artwork made here at the museum. If you're wondering how that color application started, well, we're gonna see that here. Sarah down on this end has gathered glass and blown a small little air bubble. This is a starting bubble. At that same time, Sayuri at the end of her rod has a solid bar of white. Now, color in glass is made from adding different metals from the periodic table of elements. Different metals will give us different colors. On our top screen, as I talk a little bit about color, we're seeing the interactive image of the horn that we're gonna be making our piece. Right now, we're gonna go ahead and start off by making the two smaller horns. Once these horns are complete, we'll set them off into our garage. We'll just stay nice and warm. And then we'll go ahead and work on the larger one. When it's time, we'll go ahead and bring out the smaller little horns to be joined. Now that we know a little bit about what's going on, again, we are now dropping that color down on this left-hand side This is the start of the piece. Once again, the color is made by adding different metals. We had said that blue can create cobalt, or cobalt can create blue glass, manganese can create purple and black glass, and chromium can create a green glass. If you're a fan of red and pink glass, well, that just means you have expensive taste. Red and pink glass is produced by adding gold, which makes it some of the more expensive color in the glass industry due to that gold content that the color contains. So the first horn is now completed, and it made its way to the garage. The garage is an oven that's about 1,000 degrees on the hot end. On the cold side, it's about 900 degrees Fahrenheit. And there it's gonna stay nice and warm until we are ready to bring it out and actually attach it to the main part of our horn. Again, that will be happening later, so as we produce the second horn necessary, it will make its way to the garage, and after that, we'll go ahead and start up on the main piece. You can see on the left-hand side of the hot shop, Sarah is now gathering glass on a bigger rod. That will be the start of the giant piece that will. a little hot torch action on that little break off section. Later on, we'll use that hot torch to fuse it to the main section. As of right now, it will disappear in the garage where it will stay at about 1,000 degrees and stay nice and warm. Now that we've completed the first little parts that are necessary, we will now move on the main section of the horn. It's already been started on the left-hand side of the hot shop, and we're going to go ahead and begin to gather on that part, make it a little larger. Ultimately, again, we are going to be producing what you see on the left-hand side of the pedestal. If you have any questions, again, my name is David. I'm your MC. You can always ask me any question. You can shout my name or raise your hand as we continue with the process. But if you're standing on the top balcony, you have one of the best views of the glass action. The best pictures I've ever seen coming out of the museum have always been from the top balcony. It really is a great place to view it. And as Sarah starts up the next piece, I do want to let everyone know about a special event that the museum will be hosting later this month, which is our slider cook-off competition happening later this month. Again, if you're looking for a party for also some food, our slider event is a must-go-to event. We're going to have different restaurants from this area competing to see who can make the best slider burger. At the end of the day,
presents the 7th annual Slider Cook-Off on Saturday, March 24th. Boogie on down for some tasty sliders from 5 South Sound restaurants and see a far-out glass-blowing show featuring Mr. Awesome, John Miller. Do the hustle in your best 1970s disco threads and groove the night away to the sounds of the 90s. Tickets are available at museumofglass.org. Don't wait to get your tickets to the hottest event in town, Slider Cook-Off at the Museum of Glass. Be there or be square.
Again, tickets are now available for our slider event. If you're just joining us now, welcome to the Museum of Glass. Remember that the action is starting down here on the left-hand side of the hot shop, but eventually it will be moving down to the center. Now, the way that this museum works is that visiting artists are invited to come here to the museum. A handful of every single week in the year, we will have a different visiting artist, sometimes from across the country or even locally. Again, our visiting artist here today is Tina, down with the pink in the hot shop floor. She's been working with glass since she was 19 years old and now is currently the artistic director at Pilchuck Glass School, a world-famous glass institution started by Dale Chihuly back in the 70s. And we can see an image here of Pilchuck Glass School. Again, Tina is the artistic director for that program known internationally. and she's going to be spending the next couple days here in Tacoma with our museum professional crew, making some of her art pieces that will later be shown off in a gallery. If you're interested in seeing more of Tina's work, you can always go to her website to see some of her recent work. Right now, Sarah is entering the furnace, holds about approximately 1,000 pounds of molten glass. Remember, that furnace is approximately 2,100 degrees, and that furnace is always turned on. It doesn't take any holiday breaks, any weekends off, sick time, vacations on, 24/7, 365 days a year. It's been running for about 7 years straight, non-stop now. Just like last time, we're using a wooden block. A wooden block ensures that the bubble will blow out nice and evenly by spreading the molten glass around a bubble and also the heat. If you're wondering how our piece will be broken free from the rod, well, we have taken that step here today. We have created a constriction, and if you're wondering how our piece or what we are making here today, again, on our pedestal down here, we are seeing these horns. We're gonna be producing one of those here today, now at the museum. This time with the exception that it is gonna be white glass. So on our top screen, this is what we will be producing. We've already made 2 of the small little horns. They're staying nice and warm, about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And we will now continue with that work. Remember that we will be breaking off the section of glass that we have towards the tip. We're gonna go ahead and get rid of that later on when the glass is cold. We are now getting ready to transition this piece onto a different rod. On your left-hand side of the hot shot, Gabe with the black hat has created a punty. That's gonna be the transfer rod. We're gonna attach this to the very front portion of our horn down here, and we're gonna begin to work on the opposite end. Remember that we still need to stretch this out and create a curve. We will also be adding smaller horns to this piece, but as of right now, we're gonna go ahead and get ready for that transition. Remember that this punty that we bring over will be broken free. So we will break this piece off later on. The clear glass that you're gonna see here is just what we're gonna use to hold it. But again, later on, when it's cold, we will go ahead and cut that right off using different grinding wheels and grits. And look at that. That is the transition. That's going to be the new handle. Remember that clear part we will get rid of later on when the glass is cold. As of right now, though, it's going to be our handle. A little bit of water on that jack line we created already, a little constriction, a little tap, and look at that. We can now begin to work on the opposite end. We're going to go ahead and stretch that. And remember, we do need to create a curve also. All right, well, this is going to be the move that we get the length for our horn. You see, we got it nice and hot. We got the initial bend in. We still need to have the coming back, so there's still a little bit more work to do. But at the initial part have now, as we get this piece hot, we do need to get it nice and hot to continue the curve. But remember, when it gets hot, it starts and begins to move. Now, this is the problem that Gabe faces now as he takes this heat. When he's entering that chamber, it will begin to move a lot. As we continue to work now, do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions that you might have about the glass process you are now seeing? We still need a little bit more work to do. We will be adding 2 horns additional. That will be happening here after we finish setting it up. So the torch that we're now using is called the hot torch, and it's the hottest piece of equipment on this hot shop floor, approximately 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's so hot that it can actually boil the color away. So we're very careful not to overexpose. we bring out the second horn that we will be adding using the hot torch again. On contact, is going to fuse both pieces together. Just like hot glue, they are now stuck together. Now that makes one, but we still have one more to go down here on the hot shop floor. Again, our gaffer here today is Ben Cobby, professional glassmaker, part of the Museum of Glass Hot Shop crew. Over 25 years of professional experience. We also have Gabe down here, 20 plus years. And we also have Sarah here, 18 plus years. And this makes the Museum of Glass Hot Shop crew. We have Sairi down here helping out the Museum of Glass Hot Shop crew. But again, today we do have a visiting artist. Tina is down here. Again, she has the executive decision power. If she sees something she doesn't like, well, we are making pieces for her down here. She has all control of the pieces produced today. Well, look at that. We have just completed our piece down here. The next step that we will take is to bring our glass back to room temperature. If we leave the glass out here, it'll actually get too cold, too fast. It can break, crack, and even explode. If we want to prevent it from breaking, we'll have to set it into an annealer. The annealer is the black oven with the green number 4 on your right-hand side. It is currently sitting at 920 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will be the home of our piece for the next 24 hours. Now, Sarah has suited up in a heat protective layer with some Kevlar gloves. We're gonna go ahead and break it free. She's gonna grab it, and she's gonna make her way onto the annealer. To break the piece free, we will just use a couple drops of water and a little tap. Look at that. Can we give our whole team and, of course, our visiting artist, Tina, a round of applause? Well, we do have a very interesting day here today. We're going to have Hilltop artist students coming down to the hot shop floor. But can we give, again, our visiting artist, Tina, another round of applause? Once again, our hot shop crew will be heading out, but we are going to be transitioning here very shortly. You can stick with us, but in 5 minutes we will be coming back and continue with the glass blowing fun. We have a very exciting day planned out for all of our visitors. So in about 5 minutes, probably less than that, we're going to go ahead and start it right back up. You can hang around the hot shop floor, check out the top balcony. You can grab a coffee, but we will be back here very shortly.
bench, we are stuffing color cups and pulling some black paint. We're going to use the black paint to create stripes on cylinders, and those cylinders are going to be used for centerpieces at our annual Better Futures Luncheon.
Chop it all up into little pieces just like these.
Right, we're taking the cane, we're going to put it in the garage so it heats up slowly.
So then we can roll them up on a blowpipe.
So we lay them all out on a plate, and then Sarah makes a collar, which is kind of like a disc around the pipe, and then she rolls up the cane once they're all heated up.
We take a gather on it, and then Dave is going to block it up. We'll blow it out into a cylinder form. Teamwork, it's all about teamwork.
What we do is we shape it and make it into a cylinder,
Punt it up, we'll get a lip wrap.
and then from there we finish the piece.
So once they're done in the hot shop, they go in the annealer for 12 hours, and then they come out, and they come to this place called Cold Shop, where we do all the magic.
So basically, these come out of the nailer, and we knock the putties off, and it has these sharp edges on here. And you go to the first diamond wheel, diamond grit.
We got this thing called a cerium wheel, it's a natural mineral, and you just polish. Hit it with a sponge real quick. More water. Then we air gun it. And it went from being foggy to being clear.
Wondering how a day of glass making begins? Well, it begins something like this, where the team communicating, talking about the roles that each person will need to take, and also what is expected here today. We figure out the colors, we have a clear plan of what the day will look like. Pretty much in every single hot shop, before you begin to blow glass, you have a meeting like this, just so everyone can understand where everyone will be. There's a lot of moving parts to create something like this, so the team talks about what's going to be going on, what things to expect. I'll introduce some of the students, but again, this is the Hilltop Artist Students, a local nonprofit organization aimed to help out the youth. Now, their main hot shop is located about 10 minutes away from here at Jason Lee Middle School. Any student from the age of 12 to 21 can participate and be part of this crew. The students you see now are part of team production. This is the advanced students that we have making some of the pieces for our gallery. Down here in the center, we're seeing a couple different students. And I'll make sure to introduce everyone in a little bit here. As we start this piece off, we can see how everything will be coming together here shortly. We will also have a special student be coming in. We like to call him Peter Late Again, because he happens. Yes, and if you heard me right, we will be having Peter Late Again back here in the hot shop floor, producing some glass floats that we will be selling later on. Again, down here on the left-hand side, we have Nikki down here. She is going to be entering the glass furnace. Again, it's about 1,000 pounds of molten glass sitting behind this door. Now, what Nikki does is she's dipping the rod inside of that ceramic pot that's behind there. You can think of the furnace as a hot bowl of soup. Now, Nikki down here, she is a junior at Charles Wright Academy, a local school here in our area. Now, Nikki's been working with glass for just about 2 years now, and she's joined our team production. One way we can color glass is by rolling into crushed up glass. Now, we saw Nikki just roll the surface into the crushed up glass that we have here. Now, to create coloring glass, it's different metals from the periodic table of elements. By adding cobalt to clear glass, we can create blue glass. Manganese can give us purple glass. Chromium can give us green glass, and so on. Again, it's specifically metals from the periodic table of elements that will give us different colors. Now, depending how dense we want that color layer, Nikki could take one roll into the color. Heck, she can even take 7 if she really wanted to. That would just vary the density color layer that's achieved. If we want to make a piece a larger or even bigger, we will have to take another dip into the furnace. Now, Nikki let that core cool down, and she did that for a couple different reasons. She's giving herself the ability to gather more glass, but also maintain more control. Typically, when we're describing something in the glass industry, we describe it by the amount of dips. So this is a 2 gather piece so far. And if she feels like she's gathered too much glass, we see this move called a strip gather, where we hold the rod straight down to get rid of excess glass. Now, again, the heat of the gather is hot enough to roll into further color. All around the hot shop floor, we have these steel tables that we use for shaping. We call these marvering tables or marver table. Now, traditionally, these tables were made out of a solid slab of marble. That's where we get that word marver from, but it's a great shaping tool. By rolling back and forth, we can shape the molten glass. Now, this is the very start of the piece, but notice that down on this left-hand side, we have my Sean, another student, part of the Hilltop Artist Glass program. Now, my Sean is a student at Stadium High School, literally about 10 minutes away from here, and he's gonna repeat that same process by gathering up color, rolling on the surface, and then we have Trent down here. Trent's job is to use a So down here, once again, we do have Blake. He's gonna be taking yet another dip of molten glass on the top layer. Using a tool called the Jax, he is shaping the molten glass a little bit more, setting it up for the next step. Now, we are gonna be producing pumpkins here today, and the start of the pumpkins will start off on that left-hand side with my Sean. We will then move it down here with Blake, and then eventually we're gonna finish them up down here on the right-hand side. The gaffer that's gonna be on this end is gonna be Julian, another student, part of the Hilltop Artist Glass program, and a student at Wilson High School. Wilson High School has our second location of a hot shop. They also run an after-school and a daytime program. Usually high school students go to that hot shop, but again, we do make exceptions. And they even have an after-school glass blowing program. And right now we have our initial crew, but we are going to be having a special student. We're going to have Peter Ladigan down in the center hot shop creating some Biot floats that we will use later to send him off to Biot, France. Now, there's going to be a fundraiser that we will produce again, but the man of the hour will be here very shortly. To create the ridges in our pumpkin, down here we're entering a optic mold. This optic mold will give the ridges necessary to create the ridges in a pumpkin. Now, depending on the size of the piece, we'll use a different optic mold, but again, this is how we will produce the ridges We have also decided to roll on the surface of the ridges to create an XF pattern. Now, typically, this is how a production studio is run. So as we watch the live glass blowing, notice how many moving parts there is to create one single pumpkin and how many hands a pumpkin goes through before it is complete. Well, we have the first completed pumpkin down here. The next step is to add the decorative stem. We have a section off right here, and we're gonna focus our camera on the little bench right here so we can understand and see what's going on here today. So if you're joining us, once again, we have my Sean Cabrera down here, a student. Now, we're going to start off with the start of the piece. We saw a piece being finished. Remember, it needs to cool down properly in order for it not to break. So it's going to stay in oven sitting at 920 degrees for the next 24 hours. But we'll follow the start of a piece. Again, my Sean being a student at Stadium High School. Going to go ahead and roll into the crushed up glass. This is how we're achieving the color. Color is made by adding different metals from the periodic table of elements. Different metals will produce different colors. A purple like this, we will add manganese to create purple broken up glass. If you're a big fan of red and pink glass, however, it just means you have expensive taste. Red and pink glass, of course, is made from adding gold to clear glass. Now, once again, if you're wondering about this, again, this is typically how a production studio is run. Again, this is Hilltop Artist students. They have two different glass blowing studios, one located at Jason Lee Middle School and the second one at Wilson High School. All right, well, Tanner Martin down here is bringing over the stem that we will use to produce that decorative stem right on the very top portion. We have Jack Spitzer here, also a student at Wilson High School, and Tanner is a student at Stadium High School. Again, both those high schools located about 10 minutes away from here. As we continue to work, do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions about what you see here today? It's okay if you don't. If you want to sit back, relax, enjoy the show, you are more than welcome to. Again, the top balcony is a great place to view the live glass blowing. It's a great also place to take any photos or videos of the action going on. So all around the hot shop floor, we have instructors. Down on this end, we have James Downey, an instructor, part of the Hilltop Artist Glass program, and also a mentor for a lot of the students here. So we do have a couple different furnaces here today at the museum. We have our big furnace down here. This is where the hot molten glass is. It's about 2,100 degrees, or about the same temperature as molten lava. Behind that door ultimately lies a giant ceramic pot to where the hot glass sits at. So on our diagram we see on our top screen, we're seeing what's behind that door. Remember that everything here is pretty much powered by natural gas being our fuel. You can also think of the furnace as a giant pot of soup that is always turned on. That furnace never takes any holiday breaks, any vacations or sick days. It's always turned on. And then we also have the glory hole, which is a reheating chamber, approximately 2,300 degrees, so slightly hotter than the actual furnace. Once we're out here, the glass is beginning to cool down, and if we want to continue to work with it and manipulate it, we will then enter the glory hole to give it that necessary heat. Hopefully here shortly, we'll start up a different project. Down on this left-hand side of the hot shop floor, we have these glass floats that will be produced by one of our students. Again, Peter Ladigan will be coming into the hot shop floor to produce these glass floats. We have a special day for him because Peter will be going off to France later on to continue with his glassblowing career. We have an artist out there that's going to be teaching him. But to send him out there, we are going to be producing and selling these floats again for Peter. Now, Peter Ladigan will be coming into the hot shop here very shortly, hopefully, to produce some of these for him to be sent off to France. If you're interested in helping out Peter and Hilltop Artists, you can always purchase these floats. The proceeds for these floats will be going back to him to continue his glass-making dream. And again, Peter Ladigan will be here shortly to produce these floats. So down here, I'm going to introduce one of the students. We have Blake Julick, a student at Wilson High School. He's been blowing glass for about 4 years now. And he's a sophomore, once again, at Wilson High School. And he's part of the after-school glass blowing crew at Wilson High School. So it's an elective that he takes after school where he can work glass. Now, the glass blowing class is a class that he can take just like ceramics or painting. But it's a glass blowing class, and again, Julian is part of their after-school program. Down on the left-hand side of the hot shop, we also have Trent. Now, he's a mentor and instructor for Hilltop Artists, and he's going to be down here helping out the students a little bit get going and producing some numbers. And another instructor and mentor we have, again, down on the right-hand side, we have James, who's helping out the team by putting these into the oven that will slowly cool them down. To recap a little bit about glass blowing and what I had mentioned over here on this left-hand side or your right-hand side of the hot shop floor, the process that you're seeing here today, the glass blowing process, began around the height of the Roman Empire, about 2000 BC. So we're gonna produce these very last pumpkins here, and we're gonna take our usual break at 1 o'clock. So this one's running a little late after that, but once again, we are gonna be taking our break here very shortly. We're gonna finish this last pumpkin up here. Julian has a hold of that. This is gonna be the very last one. We're gonna go ahead and take a break after this piece, and then we're gonna come right back around 2 o'clock. Well, this wraps up our morning live glass blowing demonstration. Thank you so much for coming in. It's my pleasure to be your MC here today, but we will be back in about 1 hour. If you want to grab a coffee, a lunch of your own, you can join us right back up in about 1 hour as we have the Hilltop Artist students down here on the hot shop floor. And not to mention, we have a very special student coming in. Again, Peter Ladigan is going to be down here in the hot shop floor, producing some Biot floats that we will use to auction and help him fundraise money later on. So again, Peter Ladigan is going to be in here shortly. Hopefully he's not late again, but we will see.